You slept 8 hours, and you woke up exhausted, not a little tired, exhausted. The alarm went off, and the first thing you felt was something close to despair. Your body felt heavy. Your mind was wrapped in something thick and slow. You got up, you started moving, and somewhere around the second cup of coffee, you became functional. But you never felt good. You never felt rested. You just became capable of moving through the day until it was time to go back to bed and do it all again. If that pattern sounds familiar, I need you to understand something right now. The problem is not that you are sleeping too little. The problem is that what you are calling sleep is not doing what sleep is supposed to do. I've spent years studying the physiology of recovery. Specifically, the question of why some people can sleep 7 hours and wake up feeling genuinely restored, while others sleep 9 hours and stumble out of bed feeling like the sleep didn't happen at all. And the difference, in almost every case, is not the number of hours. It is the quality and the architecture of what happens inside those hours. It is whether the specific biological processes that make sleep restorative actually run to completion, or whether something is blocking them, fragmenting them, cutting them short, or interrupting them at the exact moment they matter most. Today, I'm going to give you 5 reasons why that happens. 5 specific, biological, addressable reasons why you might be sleeping the right number of hours and still waking up feeling like you haven't slept at all. The loop I want to close by the end of this video. The problem may not be how many hours you sleep. And the last thing I'm going to explain today is the one mechanism that most people have never had described to them. The one that operates entirely in the background, requires no dramatic symptoms to identify, and may be the single thing standing between you and sleep that actually restores you. Let's begin. The first reason you wake up tired is one that most people intuitively understand, but consistently underestimate in scale and persistence: sleep debt. Every adult has a baseline sleep need, a specific number of hours that their nervous system requires to complete its nightly restoration. For most people, that number is between 7 and 9 hours. It is not a range you choose from. It is a biological requirement set by your genetics, your age, your level of physical activity, and the metabolic demands of your particular brain and body. When you sleep less than your individual requirement, even by 30 or 45 minutes, the difference becomes sleep debt, and sleep debt accumulates. Over the course of a week of slightly short nights, the debt builds to a level where your cognitive performance, your emotional regulation, and your physical recovery are measurably impaired, even when you don't feel dramatically sleepy. Here is the part that most people find genuinely unsettling when they first hear it. Research has demonstrated that the body adapts to chronic sleep restriction. When you spend months sleeping slightly less than you need, you stop feeling as tired as you actually are. Your subjective experience of sleepiness decreases, but your objective performance, your reaction time, your working memory, your ability to regulate emotion and make decisions, continues to decline. You have essentially recalibrated your sense of normal downward until a state of meaningful impairment feels like just a regular Tuesday. According to the CDC's 2024 National Health Interview Survey, nearly a third of American adults sleep fewer than 7 hours per night. Only slightly more than half wake up feeling well-rested on most days. The country is operating collectively with a level of accumulated sleep debt that most people have accepted as permanent background noise in their lives. Research shows it can take up to 4 days to recover from a single hour of lost sleep. 1 hour. If you have been running an hour short for months, the math of that debt is not something a weekend of sleeping in can resolve. The intervention for sleep debt is not complicated, but it requires patience. You need to extend your sleep opportunity by 30 to 45 minutes per night, not on weekends, but every night, and maintain that extension for several weeks. The recovery does not happen in a single long night. It happens through consistent, slightly extended sleep, night after night, until the accumulated debt is cleared and your body begins waking naturally before the alarm, rather than being pulled from sleep by it. The second reason you wake up tired is one that affects more people than any statistic captures because it is something you do to yourself every week without recognizing what it does to your body. Irregular sleep scheduling. What researchers call social jet lag. Your body runs on a circadian clock. a roughly 24-hour biological rhythm coordinated by a structure called the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your hypothalamus. This clock governs when you feel alert and when you feel sleepy, when cortisol rises and when melatonin is released, when your body temperature drops to enable deep sleep, and when it rises to prepare you for waking. Every physiological process involved in sleep quality is timed by this clock. The clock is remarkably precise, but it depends entirely on a consistent input to stay calibrated. You need to go to bed and wake up at approximately the same time every day. Not just weekdays, every day. What most people do instead is this. They stay up late on Friday and Saturday, sleep in on Saturday and Sunday, and then try to go to bed at their normal weekday time on Sunday night. And they wonder why Sunday night is the worst night of sleep in their week, why Monday morning feels like recovering from something, why the fog that was supposed to lift by Tuesday hasn't lifted by Wednesday. What they have done is functionally given themselves jet lag. Not the jet lag of crossing time zones. The jet lag of crossing a significant gap between your social schedule and your biological clock. Researchers call this social jet lag, and a 2025 meta-analysis of 18 studies published in a major psychiatry journal found consistent positive associations between social jet lag and poor mental health outcomes, fatigue, and circadian dysregulation. The mechanism is the same as actual jet lag. Your internal clock is set to one time, your behavior is forcing another time, and the mismatch creates a disruption in every hormonal and neurochemical signal that sleep depends on. The delayed melatonin secretion, the cortisol that doesn't arrive on schedule in the morning, the deep sleep phases that shift later and are then cut off by the alarm. All of it destabilized by the simple act of changing when you sleep by 2 hours on the weekend. The fix is real, but requires commitment. Your bedtime and wake time need to be within 30 to 45 minutes of each other every day of the week. If you want to sleep in on weekends, you can sleep 30 minutes later, not 2 hours. The circadian clock is not forgiving of large shifts, and the research on social jet lag makes clear that the disruption does not reverse over the course of a single week, back on schedule. It compounds. The third reason you wake up tired is one that lives in a cup you already hold in your hand every morning. Caffeine. Not because caffeine is harmful, it isn't, but because the half-life of caffeine, the time it takes your body to eliminate half the dose you consumed, varies between individuals from as few as 2 hours to as many as 12. For someone with a slow metabolism for caffeine, a cup of coffee at 2 in the afternoon is still circulating in meaningful concentration at 11 at night. And what caffeine does in the brain is directly relevant to the quality of sleep that follows. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors. Adenosine is a compound that accumulates in your brain during waking hours, building what researchers call sleep pressure, the biological drive that makes sleep restorative. The longer you are awake, the more adenosine accumulates, and the more restorative the sleep that follows will be. When you sleep, adenosine is cleared, and you wake up with low adenosine and high alertness. That is what feeling rested actually is, at a molecular level. Caffeine does not clear adenosine. It blocks the receptors that detect it. So the sleep pressure is still there, still building, still accumulating. You just cannot feel it. And when caffeine's block wears off, all of that accumulated adenosine floods the receptors at once. The timing of that release, if caffeine was consumed late in the day, overlaps with your sleep window. And the resulting biochemical environment is one in which your brain does not enter and sustain the deep, slow-wave phases of sleep as effectively as it would if adenosine had been accumulating naturally without interference. A meta-analysis of 24 sleep studies found that caffeine reduced total sleep time by an average of 45 minutes and sleep efficiency by 7%. A randomized clinical trial published in the journal Sleep in 2024 found that 400 milligrams of caffeine, roughly the amount in 2 large cups of coffee, consumed 6 hours before bedtime had significant disruptive effects on sleep quality. 6 hours, not 2 hours before bed. 6. If you are drinking coffee at 2 in the afternoon and going to bed at 10 at night, you are sleeping in the presence of caffeine. And that presence is reducing the depth and architecture of your sleep in ways that your subjective experience may not fully register, because the sleep feels like sleep, but that your body registers with precision every morning when the alarm goes off. The practical intervention. Move your last caffeine consumption to before noon if possible, or no later than 2 in the afternoon if that is not realistic. For people with slow caffeine metabolism, this cutoff needs to be earlier, not later. The fourth reason you wake up tired is the one that most people are aware of as a concept, but almost no one understands mechanistically. Sleep fragmentation. There is a widely held belief that if you sleep 8 hours, those 8 hours are approximately equivalent to any other 8 hours, that the number is the primary variable. But this is not how sleep works. The restorative value of sleep is almost entirely determined by its architecture, by how continuously you move through the cycles of light sleep, deep slow-wave sleep, and REM, and by whether those cycles run to completion without interruption. Deep slow-wave sleep is where the glymphatic system flushes toxic proteins from the brain. It is where growth hormone is released to repair tissues and regulate metabolism. It is where the immune system performs its nightly maintenance. It is where the physical restoration of the body happens. A single cycle of deep sleep, running uninterrupted from its onset through its natural completion, does something categorically different to your brain and body than the same duration of light or fragmented sleep. When sleep is fragmented, broken by brief arousals, by noise, by a partner moving, by an irregular breathing event, by a blood sugar correction, by a cortisol spike, by any interruption that pulls you momentarily toward the surface before you sink back, the deep sleep cycle is disrupted. You may not consciously wake, you may not remember any interruption, but the architecture breaks, and the restoration does not complete. This is why two people who both report sleeping 8 hours can have dramatically different experiences of morning energy. One of them moved through 4 complete, uninterrupted sleep cycles and ran every restorative process to completion. The other was micro-aroused dozens of times across the night, never reaching the depth or duration of slow-wave sleep their body needed, and woke up to an alarm that found them midway through a cycle rather than at a natural transition point. Sleep inertia, that deep, heavy grogginess that makes the first 30 to 60 minutes of a morning feel like moving through concrete, is worst when you are awakened from the middle of a deep sleep cycle rather than at the natural end of one. The alarm disrupts the cycle. The brain is flooded with residual adenosine that hadn't fully cleared. Cerebral blood flow to the prefrontal cortex takes time to return to daytime levels, and you experience the morning as a kind of slow, thick emergence from somewhere your body was not ready to leave. The interventions for sleep fragmentation depend on the cause. Temperature. A sleeping environment warmer than 67 degrees Fahrenheit elevates core body temperature enough to suppress deep sleep. Noise, even low-level intermittent noise, the kind that doesn't wake you consciously, can produce micro-arousals that interrupt sleep architecture. Alcohol. Even moderate evening alcohol accelerates the transition to sleep, but fragments the second half of the night as the liver metabolizes it and cortisol rises. Light. Any light reaching the retina during sleep can suppress melatonin and shift the depth of subsequent sleep cycles. Each of these is individually addressable. Addressed together, the difference in sleep architecture can be significant. The fifth reason you wake up tired is the one I promised at the beginning. It has no dramatic symptoms. It does not feel like a sleep problem. It is silent, consistent, and operating entirely in the background. In most of the people it affects, completely undetected. Your cortisol rhythm is miscalibrated. Your body produces cortisol on a 24-hour cycle regulated by your circadian clock. Cortisol is lowest in the first half of the night, begins rising in the early morning hours, and reaches its daily peak around the time of natural awakening. This morning cortisol surge, what endocrinologists call the cortisol awakening response, is the body's mechanism for transitioning from sleep into active wakefulness. It mobilizes glucose, elevates blood pressure slightly, increases arousal, and prepares the physiological systems that need to be online when you start the day. When this response is robust and well-timed, you experience it as waking up feeling alert and ready. The transition from sleep to wakefulness is smooth. Your energy arrives with you. But chronic psychological stress, the sustained, low-grade, ongoing pressure of modern life, dysregulates the HPA axis, the system that governs cortisol production. Research published in the American Journal of Medicine in 2025 found that chronic stress leads to elevated evening cortisol and a flattening of the normal diurnal cortisol curve, higher when it should be low during the night, spiking unpredictably rather than rising gradually, and, critically, producing what researchers describe as a blunted cortisol awakening response in the morning. A blunted cortisol awakening response means that when the alarm goes off, the hormonal preparation your body should have been running in the final hours of sleep did not run properly. The cortisol that should have been mobilizing your systems, preparing glucose, transitioning you smoothly from sleep to wakefulness, arrived late, arrived weak, or arrived in the wrong pattern. And so you wake up into a state of physiological unpreparedness. Your brain is conscious, but your body is not yet ready. The alertness does not come. The energy does not materialize. You are awake in every way except the one that counts. And then you drink coffee to compensate. And the caffeine blocks your adenosine receptors and creates a sensation of alertness that is biochemically different from the natural HPA-regulated alertness you were supposed to feel. And the underlying miscalibration continues, untouched, night after night. The intervention for a dysregulated cortisol rhythm is not a supplement or a medication. It is behavioral, and it is unglamorous. Morning light exposure, specifically, getting outside within 30 minutes of waking and receiving natural bright light for 15 to 20 minutes, directly stimulates the suprachiasmatic nucleus and helps recalibrate the circadian clock that governs the cortisol rhythm. Physical movement in the morning, even a 10-minute walk, activates the cortisol response in a positive way and helps establish its proper timing. Consistent sleep scheduling, as I described earlier, removes the circadian disruption that dysregulates HPA axis timing, and reducing the chronic stress load, not as an aspiration, but as a concrete daily practice, is the only intervention that addresses the root cause rather than the symptoms. Let me bring this together. You are waking up tired every morning for one or more of 5 specific reasons: accumulated sleep debt that has redefined your sense of normal, irregular sleep scheduling that is functionally giving you jet lag every week, caffeine that is in your bloodstream when your brain needs to be running its deepest restorative work, sleep fragmentation that is breaking your recovery cycles before they can complete, or a dysregulated cortisol rhythm that is sending you into the morning without the physiological preparation your body needed to be there. None of these require a diagnosis. None require a prescription. All of them are addressable with behavioral changes that, maintained consistently, can change what mornings feel like within weeks. Here is where to start. Not with all 5, with one. Identify which of the 5 descriptions most precisely fits what you experience. Is your tiredness the kind that accumulates across the week and lifts only on vacation? Sleep debt. Is it worst after weekends? Social jet lag. Is it accompanied by a sense that the coffee isn't working the way it used to? Caffeine architecture. Is it present even after nights where you slept a solid number of hours without apparent interruption? Sleep fragmentation. Is it a flatness, a lack of arrival, a sense that your body is present but your energy never showed up? Cortisol rhythm. Start with the one that fits. Work on it with the consistency you would give any intervention that mattered. And pay attention, not to how you feel on the first morning, but to the trend across 3 weeks of sustained change. 8 hours in bed is not 8 hours of recovery, not automatically, but it can be. That is what you're working toward. Take care of yourself.